Good evening. What we're going to talk about tonight were some of the reasons for the organizing of the Indian Ecumenical Conference. And so my name is Ian McKenzie, and Brother John Haskell is beside me, and we will reflect on the when and where of the Indian Ecumenical Conference. The actual conference took place in Morley, Alberta, on the Stony Reservation, and the second meeting was in 1971. Actually, the first meeting was in the Crow Reservation in the United States. And at that meeting, we had an invitation from Chief John Snow for the second meeting, which took place at Morley, and from then on, the Ecumenical Conference took place at Morley, Alberta. The reason for organizing the Indian Ecumenical Conference was primarily the growing concern about the religious divisions and factionalism taking place in almost all of the First Nations communities on the continent, both Canada and the United States. These were religious divisions between denominations. Some small reservations even had as many as 10 churches. In other cases, it was factionalism between Christians of various denominations and traditional First Nations religions, such as those amongst the Cree or most tribes that continued to practice, often underground, their traditional religious ceremonies and ministries. We were concerned about that, not only because of the religious factionalism in its own right, but partially, or essentially rather, because this division in effect meant that the Native communities were not able to function properly, since the sacred is an essential and integral part of First Nations life. And if you shatter or crack or break up the sacred in a community, the whole community suffers. The conference was originally initiated and founded by Robert K. Thomas, Cherokee anthropologist and traditional religious leader in his own right. He and I spent some time discussing this idea and planning the conference in 1968 in the Anishinaabe Institute in Toronto. And then we asked Wilfred Pelche to become the chair of it. And Anishinaabe Institute gave us the permission to organize a small committee. This committee met later on in 1968 in Winnipeg, funded by the Anglican Church of Canada, and we then proceeded to have 3 more meetings in different parts of the continent, getting ready for the main conference in 1970 in the Crow Reservation. The assumption that dominated this conference was that if we brought together Native religious leaders of various denominations and of traditional leadership, that they could sit and discuss these issues without fighting, without arguing, without causing disagreements among themselves. Whereas if you did that with non-Native people, you'd end up with a lot of arguments and divisions. We were testing that assumption because, of course, it hadn't happened to this extent before. And the upshot of it is that assumption proved to be correct. That the first year there were about 120 elders gathered, and from then on it went up to as many as 250 elders gathering to carry on that discussion. So those were the main reasons for organizing it and the initial result. So I'll turn it over to John now to carry on.
Okay, and Brother John Haskell from Michigan on the state side. And the IEC, the Indian Ecumenical Conference, was really a result of the uprising of the Indian way of life among our peoples throughout that same time. many of the people who had been forbidden to have their religious rights throughout the United States and Canada, we had to do it in hiding. Many of the people had that relief that they could finally come out with their drums and their pipes, and at that same time there was such a long time they couldn't do it. The people had to find out who really they are, and so we decided to come back and to invite our spiritual leaders to come back and talk about who we are and give of themselves and just be that strength to the people. Among our Anishinaabe, our Indian people, there's a need for support of people on our own as who we are, and our relationships, and bringing it to the earth down Morley, Alberta. It really brought us to the earth, and we are able to share our lives with each other and to be that strength to each other. And many good things grew out of this beginning. And I remember the first days we were getting together, trying to get things all together as one, and to be some kind of people. We had no idea what we'd be, but we knew what we wanted. We knew that we wanted to be that powerful source of strength, not only to ourselves as medicine people, but also to the world, and showing that we are a people, and we do have that need of having our own religious and spiritual way of life. All these other lives were put down upon us. We had to be obedient, subservient to many European ways of life, and this kind of freedom once just broke forth from us. We were able to be who we were. It really gave us the strength to be in this world today and have our part as the native, the first peoples of these lands, the indigenous peoples and the First Nations of these lands. It was our ability to say that we are something worthwhile, and we are, in our spiritual life, still a part of this same world that gives us the strength.
Thank you, John.